Hey, what's up everyone? Maury Croston here, and today we're going to be going over how to throw a football for beginners, and we're going to start the video right now. This is myself throwing a couple days ago, and really over the past 6 weeks I've been able to make some adjustments within the throw that has really helped me out a lot. Main thing that I've been trying to do is really limit the amount of time that I go through the release. A lot of problems that I see with quarterbacks ends up happening from one, how we're gripping the ball. Okay, so it's important when it comes to gripping the football is we want to make sure that we have plenty of width on the ball, right? We don't want to end up having our fingers really close together. We want to be able to spread those fingers out. You can see my index finger is getting close to the top. My pinky finger is past the middle part of the laces there, and that just allows me to have more grip, more control of the football. But at the same time, I don't want to end up getting a position where my wrist ends up breaking. You can see how my wrist is flat here. I see a lot of times when quarterbacks are getting into this position, they're already broken within their wrist, which means they're bent. And one of the things that's important to notice here is I actually tried to keep the nose of the football straight down here. So in my mind, this is how I was trying to throw. It was really more like a Dan Marino type of throw, right? So you can see here how he goes back. See how he keeps that nose of the football down? That's really what I was trying to do here, is just try to keep that wrist nice and cocked and keep that nose of the football down the best that I can, and then be able to come right up and through from there. Right? And one of the things that he talks about is being able to just come up and out, right? That was a big concept for him. And while that is important to understand, there is a loading process that we have to go through. And when you do that, it's a quick action of being able to get that elbow up and getting the hand away from the body to be able to stretch out that pec. So this is an important part of being able to throw the football well, is we have to be able to load the football effectively, right? And when you watch, and I recommend if you're trying to learn how to throw the football, you want to take some video to see what it is that you're doing and be able to compare it to, some of the best guys. You can compare it to this video if you want, because it's going to be pretty slowed down. But you can see here the nose of the football wants to be facing either straight back or straight up, or slightly off to the side. We don't want that nose of the football to be going up, and we also don't want the nose of the football to be going out. Okay, so we can go back here, we can go down, right? We can't really go do a down right here, and then we can also go slightly here. All right, so those are the main things that we want to do when it comes to the upper body. We're going to be putting a focus on the upper body at first here. And then from this position, right, so we load the ball, right, and then from here, we want to be able to get the wrist around quick. Okay, the next common mistake that I see is people want to lift this ball up, right, without having any type of rotation happening within the wrist, which then really makes it so that ball gets far back behind. All right, so this is for a video for beginners, but what you don't want to do as a beginner is you don't want to end up giving yourself bad habits. Okay, and a big bad habit that I have to correct all the time with quarterbacks is they're lifting the ball too far behind here without keeping any type of rotation, so the nose of the football at this point is facing straight back rather than rotating around. Okay? So then once we start this process of rotating the wrist, we want to continue that all the way through the throw. So that makes it so then we can end with the football being in a neutral C position, right? So my wrist wants to be neutral. It doesn't want to end up being bent as we're throwing the ball or releasing the ball, and we want to be coming down on the ball, okay? So you don't want to be pushing it, right? So what I see a lot as well is another way to be able to know if you're not in a good position with the wrist is when you get to that release point. If you're throwing the ball straight ahead, which would be 15 yards, 20 yards, if you start to throw the ball deeper, it's a little bit different. But if we're throwing the ball straight ahead, when we release the ball, so when all the fingers are on the ball, we need to be able to see that the ball is in a neutral spot, right? So we don't want to see the ball facing upwards at this point. We want to be seeing the ball at a neutral spot, and then we release from there. That's how we know we're going to be able to come down on the football. And then when we release it, we want to be able to release it, and the first thing that happens when you release is you should see that thumb going down, okay? So it's here, boom, thumb coming down. You want to be coming across, but that thumb has to turn all the way over. Okay, so quick load, right? We don't want to be long with our load. During this transition phase, which I define that transition phase as soon as that ball starts coming upwards, right? So we start off with going back. It's different for everybody in terms of how far back they need to go. As soon as we start going up, we need to get that wrist to start rotating. Then we need to be able to rotate all the way through, so then that ball ends up in a neutral position, so then we can come down and through. When it's a deeper throw, the nose of the football is going to be facing a little bit more upwards, but we still want to have that same concept of being able to get that wrist around quickly. It just ends up being a little bit longer load. The ball gets a little bit lower, and that front shoulder gets a little bit higher during that initial load. Next big thing that we want to be able to go into is going to be that lower body. One, get that front foot down. Right? So we don't want to spend a lot of time with this front foot off the ground. We need to get that front foot down on the ground. We need to be rotating off of that back leg. Okay, rotate first within this back foot, right? So it's not really about pushing, it's about rotating the best we can, and we want to be able to keep as much weight back as we can here. So that means we want to have more weight in the heel. We don't want to have a lot of weight in the front of the foot. We want to have most of the weight in the heel, just like on the golf swing. We want to be pushing through that heel to be able to drive our weight all the way through. So what ends up happening here is a lot of times people land with this front foot, and I usually tell guys you want to have 60% of your weight on your back leg and 40% on your front leg when you land with this foot. It's impossible to keep all your weight back, but the best that you can, you want to be pushing down. So I'm pushing down hard through that inside part of the foot to keep my weight back here. Right? And then I'm trying to twist within that lower body, keeping that weight back. And then as I rotate this hip through and as this ball comes forward, I want to have a lot behind the football is what I say, which means that I want to be able to put a lot here and then shift my weight forward after I release, which means I have a lot behind it, right? Instead of being way out in front, which is what I see all the time, guys land, all their weight shifts all the way forward from the second their front foot hits the ground. So then as they come here, they end up pushing their weight back and they don't have anything behind the throw. We need to be able to keep that weight in that back leg as long as possible, so then when we turn and rotate, we could pull with that front elbow, right? Open up with that front hip and drive with that back leg to make it so we could add some velocity into the throw, okay? We control the ball with our hand and control the velocity, control the power with our hand, with our wrist. We want to be able to add more power, more velocity with the lower body. The lower body is where we're going to be able to get consistent velocity. As long as we can work out the timing and understand how that all works, we'll be able to throw the ball further. And that's really going to be the beginning steps. You got to be able to understand how to utilize that lower body. We want to be able to understand what's going on within the wrist. And then that front shoulder, we got to be able to understand like that ends up being a part of the follow through. So we don't want to be opening up that front shoulder is the main thing to think about there. Similar to how we want to be able to keep the weight back as long as we can on that back leg, we want to keep that front shoulder closed, right, or back for as long as possible. We don't want to be flinging open that front shoulder. Keep that thing closed as you're coming through, and that'll make it so then your weight comes forward rather than leans too far off to the side. You could have a slight lean, but we don't want to be leaning off to it really early off to the side, or else that's going to really throw off your ability to throw the ball further, right? That's going to go a lot more into your deep balls than it is your underneath passes. All right, so as always, if you like the information, click that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations, you can leave those down below.